you're able to join us. I know some people might come in a little later, so we are recording this. So we'll be able to fill people in as they come in. But we're really excited. We're going to be talking about cyber insurance and cyber risk and all the pieces in between. Something that I have really been pushing recently is that cyber insurance is so different from normal insurance. I'm sure all of you listening in, if you've dealt with cyber insurance at this point, you know it's a lot more of a pain point than probably any other policy you have. And that's because we like to say it's a rapidly changing industry. And so is cybersecurity in general. Cybersecurity is changing rapidly. And that's why your wonderful MSPs here are from Proda are constantly saying, hey, we have this new solution that we want to roll out for you. It's not because it's just an opportunity to say, hey, we need these things. We want to, implement this. It's really saying, look, every year new threats are real and new responses and solutions to overcome those are being put in place. So it is shifting, it is changing. So we want to talk about all of that. But maybe first, let's just talk about who's here. Andrew and Marissa, you want to introduce yourselves first? I know a lot of these people are your clients already, but for anyone who listens in who isn't.
Sure, I'll let you
Sure.
start, Marissa.
Hi, I'm Marissa Maldonado, one of the founders of Proto Technology and now the CEO over here.
And my name is Andrew Zaccoli. I'm the Vice President of Client Services here at Proda, and I also wear our security hat internally.
Also, I just wanted to say one of my other unofficial titles that I'm very proud to hold is the official nerd herder. So just,
Is that
So,
nerd
hey.
herder like with a D, like you herd nerds or you hurt nerds?
Oh, very great clarifying question. As I pick up my coffee mug that has brass knuckles, I'm sure I would understand why you would think it would be the other one, but it's the herder of nerds with a D, not a
Got
T. So
Nice.
wrangling them up and getting them supercharged to do awesome, incredible things for our clients.
I love it. And Wilson, you want to go ahead there?
Yeah. I'm Wilson Henry. I work on the Fifthwall Solutions side with Will. I primarily work on the client end, so all client interactions and reviewing policies and making sure people have the right things in place, but also, working our wholesale market. So actually talking to underwriters and finding the best possible policy for businesses.
Yep. And lastly, I'm Will Brooks. I am the solutions engineer at Fifthwall Solutions. Fifthwall Solutions we're going to go into it, but we dabble solely in cyber insurance. That's all we handle and that's what we focus on. So it's really weird to think of something like insurance as something that requires solutions, because typically insurance is simply just policies, right? It's like every other line of business. But for some reason, cyber insurance is its own unique beast and its own unique animal, and it works very directly with the types of solutions that Marissa and Andrew are able to provide to you from Proda. So we want to talk through those two things real quick. Just quick 30-second overview. Who's Proda Tech?
Hi, so we're Proto Technology. Our organization started about technically 25 years ago when, here's fun trivia, when my brother started building his book of business in his basement. And then I joined him in 2011 and we said, let's do this. And then we turned it into an LLC. And, cybersecurity has always been the decision that the layer that influences every decision that we've made. So it was a very natural evolution for us to really start to put a lot of intention into, let's actually take this to the next level and become one of the leaders in the education component and just the cybersecurity alignment to get people ahead of what this industry is evolving into. So we're based here in Atlanta. We support clients nationally. We really put a lot of heavy emphasis, as I was joking about being a nerd herder, a lot of heavy emphasis on fostering a culture here that really brings out the best in our people in this organization to really be aggressive and being able to provide the best of the cybersecurity world and the IT services. So, and I'll hand it off to Andrew to kind of talk about the why we're doing this in the first place. Andrew?
Sure. Thank you. So my role at Proda is to work with our clients day to day, help with projects, help with growth and expansion, but I also support compliance needs. So if a client needs to align to HIPAA standards, FINRA, CMMC, whatever it is that their industry is asking them to do, I get involved to help them develop the policies that they need. And put the tools and processes in place to make sure that when that auditor walks in the door, they get a clean bill of health. So I
So,
went this.
oh no, go
Go ahead.
ahead.
Yeah. So in my journey through this stuff, last year, I went and got my CISSP licensure and got to work on making some modifications to Proto's security stack, just based on what we were seeing from all these client conversations, where they get that cyber insurance renewal form, and now it's asking for something new. And we realized really early on, like, this is not just going to be one client that we get this from. So we have to be ready. And we went and made some updates to our tool set, and got some templates that we could use for the policies that they were being asked for. And that's been really, really helpful in just helping clients get good rates.
I was just going to tell a really quick funny story about Andrew and his first 90 days with us. So, leading up into that, like I'm very passionate about the teaching component of all of this, right? Because before we were like humanizing IT, and it's something that we put a lot of heavy emphasis on being able to like explain things to our clients to help, because IT, cybersecurity, all of this stuff can be absolutely terrifying for people. And so tabletops and things like that, I've been very passionate about doing that for quite some time. So then I was like, okay, we need to do an internal tabletop for us when we had that supply chain attack, the July 3rd supply chain attack that got all a bunch of MSPs, and we were one of the lucky ones that didn't get, we weren't part of that stack. So moving forward, about 3 months later, I had all leadership. This was before Andrew started with us, and we went through our tabletop of like, we need to have a real internal heart-to-heart conversation internally of what are we doing and what are we not doing for our clients, because I don't think we're doing enough. And when Andrew started with us, I literally just threw down the 20-page document. Maybe it wasn't that big, but it was pretty big, of like, here are all the action items and all the things that we need to be the best at. And that was Andrew's 90 days, and he's been running with it ever since. And so yeah, and it was like, no pressure, Andrew. Here you go.
I like it. I've been given a lot of tasks to do right when you start. You're never bored. It's a good thing.
Very true.
And to circle up to what Andrew was saying about the cyber insurance component and what you were saying with the control requirements and all that kind of stuff, and then what Marissa was saying about leading with education and the teaching component of all of this. That's really what we at Fifthwall like to do. Wilson, if you don't mind taking 30 seconds, just talk real quick about who Fifthwall is so everyone has a little bit of context as to why the heck we are on this call.
Yeah, sure. So at Fifthwall, we're a distributor of cyber insurance. Think of us as a wholesaler. So we sit right below the carrier market, and we have direct access to underwriters and direct contacts to carriers. So we know when the market's changing, when we see things pretty quickly. Having that relationships with carriers, 40 plus of them, give us a really good kind of insight of what's going on kind of in the market. We're one of the largest and oldest cyber only, Will talked about that, carrier in the United States. We started around 2016, back when cyber was very easy. Cyber insurance was very easy to get. You had a website and some gross revenue you gave out. Here's a policy. That's obviously changed with underwriting, and we'll get into that. We work with over 1,000 agencies across the country, but we're also built for MSPs to also use Fifthwall as well, direct to customers. And we started that kind of push in 2020, partnering with the security experts around the country, including Proda, and educating clients on cyber insurance, making sure they have the correct policy in place. And we've built that to about 700 plus MSPs all across the country, really utilizing and educating their clients around cyber insurance.
Awesome. 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 So I think where we want to start then, what Wilson was talking about, and I don't know how many of you on here have felt the pain point, but cyber insurance has gotten very complicated. It's gotten pricey. It's gotten expensive. It's gotten a lot more strict around who they're going to allow to have a policy. I think Marissa, you were just saying you've dealt with some clients directly who have just been denied coverage. They've just been said, "Hey, you know what? We loved you last year. We don't like you anymore." What is going on in the cyber insurance industry? So how did we get here? To Wilson's point, back in 2015, 2016, pre-pandemic days, right? It was really easy to get cyber insurance. I mean, you literally could go in, say, "Hey, here's a little information about me. See, I have an internet pulse." And the carrier would say, "Oh, great, we'll give you a policy," because they weren't aware of all the risks that were involved. So they were like giving them out like $1,000 lollipops, right? It cost like $1,000. You had a cyber insurance policy that would protect you for up to $1 million, and it was this great thing, and it was super easy to secure. And then 2019 happened, 2020 happened, and the world started going remote, and remote work started to increase. And then with the pandemic, everyone went remote. So the potential for a cyber incident just escalated dramatically. So you went from very minimal internet exposure when it came to remote desktop logins, people connecting to their work environments from coffee shops and hotel rooms and things like that, to a great increase in that where everyone's at home and they're logging in on their probably weak home networks to their businesses that also had weak networks, and it caused cyber claims and the demand for not only insurance but the amount of money that carriers were losing to increase dramatically. And when the amount carriers are losing increases heavily, the amount they start charging increases, and their standards, the strictness of all of it, also increased. And that brings us to today. So we're in 2023, and we're actually starting to see some stabilization. So I don't know about everybody here, but there are a couple of people we've talked to who have actually not seen an increase in their premium this year. That's crazy. We haven't seen that in over 4 years, but at the same time, there's still volatility. Any moment, a carrier might say, "Hey, you know what? Last year I loved manufacturers. This year I don't love manufacturers, so I'm just not going to write a manufacturer this year." You may have other carriers who last year said, "You know what? We weren't really taking on schools, but this year we'll take on some schools." They change their minds. They're always shifting around. It's kind of like sinking sand. But back in the day, it was like Oprah handing out free insurance policies. You look under your chair, "Hey, there's a cyber insurance policy for you under your chair." And it was this really exciting thing where everyone could be protected from the internet, and it was great. But then during this surge in attacks and all these things that were happening with ransomware booms and people attacking again, the trend started to shift. And so this is what's caused a lot of complication, a lot of volatility, and why MSPs and Fifthwall and why Proda and Fifthwall specifically are partnering up, because we see that this is a much greater piece of a pie here. So before we get into some of the real specifics here, I do think, Wilson, maybe you can share a little bit just about what specifically we've seen in terms of premiums. You don't really have to go into this. I can talk about this in a minute, but what have you seen being on boots on the ground in terms of premium between last year and this year? Are you seeing changes? Are you seeing shifts?
I think a lot of it definitely depends on the industry and size of companies, but a lot of renewals are actually coming back evenly. So I'm talking, you get a renewal back and it's around the same premium, where the past few years we've been seeing thousands of dollars of growth in premiums year over year if you're staying with the same carrier. Most carriers are kind of flattening out. It's always to your advantage to look at other carriers year over year because of the industries. They switch their likes and risks they like to take on. But generally, we are now seeing renewals coming back, a few $100s more or even some below. They're asking obviously more and more security questions, and they're understanding, okay, these are the right security questions we need to be asking. The underwriting is finally catching up and evening this whole premium spike going. But you can see the direct losses have been going down. So in that first graph, losses have been going down. So that means claims have been going down. So they're getting something right. Whether it's, asking the right questions on the applications, carriers are finally becoming, okay, we're seeing losses coming down. Premiums probably are at the right area for us on our books. But definitely on renewals, and even new businesses, we see a general, okay, this is kind of where that baseline is going to be for this type of industry and this type of gross revenue that they have.
Yeah, that's great. And that's something I wanted to point out here is this blue line here. This is what's called this line maps what's called your loss ratios. So to put it really simple into kind of basic insurancy language, non-insurancy language, carriers take on a certain amount of money when they charge premiums on a cyber insurance policy. So, you charge, let's say you have 5 policies, each $1,000. Now you have $5,000 that has been paid into your pocket. One of the issues that was happening was over the past, couple of years, that loss ratio was increasing, meaning there was oftentimes more money going out than they were bringing in. This was causing a lot of issues. And for the first time between 2021 and 2022, we saw a sharp decrease in loss ratios, which means carriers were happy because they're like, hey, we're making money. And they also were paying out less claims. Now, there's two sides to that, right? Some people will look at it and say, well, are they only just paying out less claims because they're just denying claims? Sometimes we'll get to that. But on the other side of that, there's another piece to this puzzle, and that's that the underwriting guidelines have increased. They are looking for better protection up front. So that's where Marissa and Andrew really can be beneficial here. I guess I throw that question to you: is up until 2019, 2020, when carriers weren't looking for anything, you had all these ransomware attacks. How does increasing your cybersecurity up front ultimately prevent? I mean, it's kind of a redundant question, but how is it ultimately going to prevent these attacks from happening? How is it going to save carriers money and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so what we see is the threat vectors that threat actors are using to execute cyber attacks is changing. So when they started requiring EDR, we started seeing fewer and fewer successful attacks on computers or servers.
Hey,
And
Andrew, what's EDR?
endpoint detection and response for
What
those
what does that
who
mean?
are, yeah, for those that are Proto customers, that's Huntress. That's the tool we use for that today. But that does a really good job of analyzing what's going on your computers and your servers, and then that data goes to a team of threat analysts that look at it, and if something looks suspicious, they can turn that computer's internet off, or they can send us a ticket and let us know about it. So that's been one of the best things that we've seen that's reduced for our clients. But now we're seeing more and more attacks that are in the Office 365 space. So that comes down to the conversations around multi-factor authentication. Uh, and you see, we make changes to the way that we do multi-factor authentication with our clients recently, and a lot of us have already had that conversation to be in line with their newest best practices of using that Microsoft Authenticator app rather than using like a text message or email multi-factor.
Yeah, I love that. And I think multi-factor is the kind of thing that is super annoying at first. When you're not used to using it, having to put in a code every time you log into somewhere can kind of be a pain. But when you recognize that, like, sometimes good security is going to be at the expense of a little bit of convenience. But when you think of the livelihood of your business and all those kind of things, you have MFA. But to take that a step further, MFA is one of those things that I think a lot of people were checking when they have those insurance apps. They were checking, yes, I have MFA, but they didn't. And that led to some issues. So there have been some things in the news over the past year of claims actually being denied because clients were misrepresenting the security that they said they had. So a misrepresentation, in a real basic a way I would say it, is it's a lie, but it's kind of like sometimes an unintentional lie. So you're not committing fraud. You're simply saying, yes, I have this, but you didn't, right? And so that MFA, there was an article that came out last summer where a client had a cyber incident, and they filed a claim with Travelers, and Travelers started doing everything they do. They brought forensics in, they started doing legal counsel, they looked at who needed to be notified, all this kind of stuff. And as they dug into the claim, they realized that the reason the incident happened is because someone was able to get in on the network without having to provide any proof that they were the person who said that they were. So there was no MFA enabled. So Travelers immediately sued the client, and the case was ultimately thrown, or the claim didn't have to be filled, because it was pretty clear cut. Hey, you said you had this, you didn't. There's another story, and we're gonna dive into limits in a little later, but there's another story where a PC store basically had a social engineering claim. Social engineering. Wilson, what's social engineering?
Tricking employees into sending money or going out to buy gift cards. There's a lot of different types of social engineering, but it's employees getting tricked pretty much.
So basically, some of their
things.
employees got tricked and lost $600,000. So they ended up spending $600,000 that they lost due to a social engineering attack. And they went and filed the insurance, and the insurance company said, "Oh yeah, we'll cover that for you, but your policy only covers you. So here's your file your claim. All right, here's your check for $100,000." And the client said, "Wait, we lost $600,000?" And the carrier said, "No, actually, your policy says we're only going to cover a social engineering claim up to $100,000, not $600,000." So this is just a point here where we like to say, look, if you have a cyber insurance policy, it's really important to know what is on that cyber insurance policy. To Marissa's point before, if you have a solution, understand what those solutions do. And that's something I love about what Prode is doing. Hey, we're going to educate you on these things. We're not just going to, all right, here's your thing, check these boxes, you're good. Because you want to know that you are protected properly. It's really important when you consider that your business has almost its entire livelihood on the internet today. That's where it is. It exists on the web. Yeah, go ahead, Marissa.
I have a question if I was a client right now.
Sure.
As a business owner. Okay, so I'm going to do all of these things. I'm going to turn on all of this stuff. I'm going to pay all these things and experience all these inconveniences and doing all the things. And then why do I need it in the first place, right? And that's kind of, I've heard that conversation of the irony now of like what you have to do in order to get it and to be able to file a claim. Probably are preventing yourself from ever having the claim in the first place, except there are anomalies in the cybersecurity world for attacks in organizations. Like, what would that type of thing look like? And maybe Andrew might be able to address that from what he's seen as well in the market.
Yeah, I'm going to toss that to you, Andrew, and Wilson probably.
So what we've seen is, as long as you're meeting the things that you say you have in place on your application, generally speaking, that policy is going to pay out. And there are certain carriers that are more reputable for having having a track record of paying claims. There are certain ones that are less reputable in that space. I think that's why it's important to work with your broker to make sure that you're not only getting the best price for your policy, but you're also using someone that's not, a fly-by-night operation that's going to leave you high and dry. My experience has been, as long as the threat vector, the way that person got in, is not something that they asked you on the application to have a protection against, and you said you had it, generally speaking, they're going to pay out that claim.
And also, I think too is the thing to also recognize is it's the web, right? Literally, I like to say the spider web, right? It might be one of your vendors that you're engaged in that has the issue, and it comes into your environment in some way or another, and you have to be prepared for that. So that's kind of like my component of just like, okay, let's do all the things, and then well, we're great. We're secured. Like this will never happen to us.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great segue into something that I think we should touch on here, because Andrew, um, you brought up this idea that, hey, you know what, a policy is going to pay out if you're doing all the right things. But there's a lot of misunderstanding out there saying, look, insurance doesn't pay out. I've heard, like, these stories that are on here. I've heard all about these stories where people aren't getting the money they're supposed to. They're not getting hit with the right things, and then you have issues where I have a supply chain attack where somebody whose services I'm using, a business I'm connected to, gets hit with a cyber attack, and now I'm infected because of that. Like, how does that all work? And like, do I have a policy that covers me from that? And that goes back to that point. It's important to know what's on your policy, and even if it's important to know if the policy you have is considered a good one. So I'm going to toss this to Wilson. Wilson, what's the difference here between the policies you see out in the wild? That's what I'm going to call them.
Yeah, the main thing all business owners should know is not all cyber insurance is created equal. There's some very, very good policies out there that fit great, that cover everything, that are comprehensive. And then there's some very bad policies out there. And some businesses that we work with, or businesses out there I know, they don't know what good cyber insurance looks like. And some agents don't know what good cyber insurance looks like, I would say as well. Not everyone is educated to the point of car insurance or house insurance. Cyber insurance is very new. It's a niche insurance, and it's definitely growing, like we talked about. But there's kind of two different things I want to make everyone aware of. People on the call either may have no coverage at all. Maybe you don't have a cyber insurance policy. Maybe you don't know if you have one, or you have an endorsement policy, which some people think, oh yeah, I have cyber, it's on my business owner policy. Usually this is added to another line of coverage, so it's a rider or an endorsement. Limits are low, so usually at or below 100,000, usually below. We usually see these endorsement policies with 50K. And as Marissa was speaking on, what if a third party affects me? Usually these endorsement policies only cover the first party. So you internally, if something happens to you, which is not great. But usually it's low cost. It's usually between $200 and $500, just a checkbox. There's not a lot of underwriting as well on these endorsement policies. And there's no compliance telling people, hey, you endorsement policies are bad. There's no set limits that businesses need to have in place. So that's why endorsement policies find their way in, and people think they're covered under cyber. On the flip side, and some people may have a standalone policy, so it's separate. It's on its own. It's a cyber insurance policy that's comprehensive, where all coverages are present. There's 28 plus coverages in a cyber insurance policy. That's a lot when compared to other lines of insurance. But full limits need to start at $1 million. That's the baseline now for small businesses and up. You can get 2 million, 3 million, 5 million limits, but that baseline now is $1 million, because incidents that have happened in the past of, I think the mean average claim now for a cyber insurance policy is at 600K. So that's usually what a catastrophic event starts at, is 600K, because lawyers are expensive. Forensics is very expensive. Fines and penalties are very expensive. But these policies, standalone policies, are designed to pay claims. Endorsement policies are not. Designed to pay claims, meaning they have approved lawyers at these carriers that'll come in and help you and be the quarterback of the incident, a breach coach, team of forensics. If you have an endorsement policy in a time of need, you'll have to go out and find your own. Who wants to call a lawyer? Find your own lawyer team to come in. It's not just getting back up and running. Oh, product, something happened, I need you to get me back up and running as quick as possible. No, there's a process you have to go through now with cyber attacks, and standalone policies help you through that process from the carrier. They have people to come through. And obviously standalone policies, if you have one, it's an investment. You went through an underwriting process. They're not cheap. They're an investment for your business. Making sure you have a good one in place is key, because you don't want to be paying for some crap. And then you probably most likely had a specific conversation with your agent or PROTA going through the applications. That's what you need to do to go through and get a standalone policy.
So what I'm hearing is these endorsement policies are what fuel the fire of cyber insurance policies don't pay claims because they're cheap. And whenever insurance is cheap, it's usually riddled with what are called exclusions, which is basically the carrier saying, we will pay you your claim as long as it's not one of these many things that we say we will not pay the claim for. And it's usually everything that you would deal with in the event of a loss, right? So I guess here's a question for the PROTA side, as cybersecurity professionals, kind of the trusted cybersecurity advisor for your clients. Why is it important to you for your clients to be carrying good cyber insurance coverage?
Andrew, you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's important because we've seen clients. I'm working with right now another healthcare practice that's not a PROTA client that is hard down, and their cyber insurer and their service provider are not able to help them because they weren't meeting the requirements on their application. You can find yourself in a position where you are not able to get the resources that you need to keep your business running while you recover. Never mind paying the bills for the people who are actually doing the work to get you back up and running. You may find yourself in a position where uh, it's a non-starter, and we've seen businesses that have closed up shop due to a cyber attack when there wasn't help available in terms of, an incident response company or a service provider like PROTA to do that type of support to restore business functions.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I would
Sorry,
say
go ahead.
also, especially in the different industries and even like in healthcare, for instance, what we've also seen. So we'll get engaged from the outside consulting side for if someone already has a problem and we're coming in. So these are some of kind of the war stories that we've seen and have experienced. We've seen them sweep it under the rug because they know that they don't have what they need in order to get it done correctly. And then you sweep it under the rug, you move forward a couple years later or even very quickly thereafter, and then there's another problem, right? And then it starts to compound where they're trapped and they don't know where to go. You start to see people say, you know what, I'm just selling the company, I'm out. Like, oh no, I'm retiring. Like, it is, like Andrew was saying, is like it's a non-starter where you see just this dramatic shift and loss of, especially for small businesses. Like, these are their, and I can say it because I say the same about mine, like it's their baby. And you can see it just completely just gone in the snap of a finger because they don't they're not prepared and they don't know what to do when it happens, and that fear and anxiety just shuts it all down, locks them up. um, and then you have the regulations that comes from it, right? So from like in the healthcare, and for instance with OCR, like if they find out that you swept it under the rug and then it comes back out to light, or someone is a whistleblower, that can happen, and then they come in and find all this. So there's all of these things that's just like, this empowers them to know, what do I do? And here's the catch of it all. As an MSP, we can't really, like, we can't fill out the application for you. We can't guide you on the recommendations of where you should not go, because we're not an insurance company. But we've seen it, and we've seen how devastating it can be. So now, no matter all of the protocols and things that you put in place to protect your environment, you still have to have that safety net, because we've seen the worst case scenarios.
It's great. Yeah. And we were talking about knowing what's on your policy, and to that point, I mean, when you have an incident, when it happens, and we like to say in the industry, it's not if, it's when, because I'm sure everyone on this webinar, anyone who watches it, has at least at some point seen a phishing email, like an email where someone's pretending to be someone else and they're saying, hey, I really need to talk to you about this thing, but I'm in a meeting. Can you text this number? And it's like, whose number is this? This isn't the number I have for this contact, right? But they try to to pull you in, draw you in, and then trick you into different things. So I'm sure people have seen this stuff. So we like to say it's not if, it's when. And your IT professional is going to do everything they can to protect you, to put all these controls in place. But another piece of the cybersecurity suite is incident response, is what it's called. It's when an incident happens, how do we respond? And that response costs money, both to fund sometimes if there's a ransom or things like that, but also all the different pieces and elements of what an incident, what curtails off of an incident. And that thing costs that costs money, and that's enough to cripple a company alone. So that's where the insurance policies really step in. And Wilson, I don't want to get people super excited about limits, because I know it's such an exciting topic, but if you can kind of just break this down a little bit, what are we looking at on a comprehensive policy? What are we seeing here?
And Wilson, as you go through it, one of our clients just asked a good question of, okay, currently I have a $1 million limit. Do you suggest we raise it to 2?
Yeah, great question. So baseline on the aggregate limit is $1 million. This is a great example of $1 million policy. There's 3 things you that cyber insurance carriers underwrite for. And there's also, things to look at based on your industry and also your yearly gross revenue. Those are 2 things that cyber insurance carriers look at. And those are 2 things that can, a real cyber insurance expert can look at and tell you if you need a $2 million limit or a $3 million limit. We're protecting against the catastrophic event. Why do we carry fire insurance? Why do we carry house insurance or car insurance? We're protecting against the catastrophic. So we want to make sure we have enough coverage for that. Same in cyber insurance. We're protecting against that big attack. There could be small ones, but the big attack is what we're nervous about. And do we have enough? So yeah, we can consult with that, and your agent can as well, on if you have the right limits in place. I think once you get to the $10 million limits, depending on or $10 million in yearly gross revenue, it's kind of when you want to start looking at the $2 million limits and getting premiums for that, maybe on your renewal. But it totally depends on industry. So that's a conversation you should be having and making sure you have the correct limits. I see companies all the time, just to tell a quick story, with 100 million in yearly gross revenue or 50 million in the healthcare space or manufacturing or even schools and education, just carrying $1 million. That's not enough. That might be able to cover you for 5 days. We're talking business interruption. How much is this affecting your business? You get paid back on that money. If you're making, almost, $2 million a week, $5 million a week for your business, well, we got to start looking at higher limits, because you're going to be out for a week. Things like that. But you can see this $1 million comprehensive policy. This is a at full limits. You can see the full aggregate limit for pretty much 3/4 of the policy. That doesn't mean every coverage is going to pay out $1 million. The $1 million is a bucket. So you may have, IR, fraud response, or forensic suspense. That's expensive. Okay, that's $80K, $100K. Well, we had extortion. The bad guys are asking for money. What are they asking for? Well, it's $400,000. Well, carriers can help you talk that down, but it's going to be a lot. So that's going to take up some of the bucket. Same with business interruption, reputational damage, things that companies don't think about when they're thinking about a cyber attack. Reputation, it'll affect you down the line. It happens. You're going to lose customers possibly. If data is released, you have to let them know. Legal expense costs a lot of money. So those are all at the full aggregate limit, but they're going in the $1 million bucket. Then you have the sub-limited down below. So that's direct monies taken from crypto jacking down. Those are in the $1 million bucket, but those are sub-limited. Will talked about, oh, you only had 100K in social engineering. We're not paying out more than 100K. Well, we want to see it at 250, but usually carriers do not go over those numbers. For the electronic theft, social engineering, telecommunication theft, those are always sub-limited. They're never at the full aggregate limit for businesses, because it just direct money's taken, and that probably happens the most as well, because that's the easiest way to trick employees. Phishing email or changing wire, fraud transfers, or the wire transfers, they get an email thread and trick you. Those are there for that. But this is what a comprehensive cyber insurance policy looks like. You got the first and third party liabilities covered, you internally, and third parties affecting you as well. But this is a great example of a full policy.
I have the quick aside, the coolest story. So I do like cybersecurity 101, speaking engagements and travel to conferences and do all this stuff for like specific industries. And I'm in this 101 just talking about it and talking about the wire fraud and or the changing your bank account for payroll. And this sweet woman just raises her hand and she goes, there was an email in my inbox asking for one of my partners to change his bank account information, and I was literally about to do it. And I was like,
Oh, no.
yeah. That was like that moment of like, yes, we just like saved your capital ASS. I was just like,
Yep.
awesome. So that was kind of a fun little story of like, it happens, right? And
Yep.
we're moving so fast. You're ingesting so much data and so much information from emails and all this stuff, and it happens.
Seriously, that's amazing in that moment. I think in telling that story, you actually led into answering a question I had. So when you look at those monies lost ones down there, where it's sublimited to 250,000, but then we talked about that incident where that business lost 600,000. So if they're sublimiting that to 250,000, and to Wilson's point, it's something that happens fairly consistently. So when a particular loss is very consistent, that's where we start to see the sublimits. What from the cybersecurity side can clients be doing to better protect themselves from losing that type of money? Because those are some of the most common incidents. So what are some things they can be doing to better protect themselves?
Education.
Yeah, I can jump in with a couple ideas there. It's a training thing first and foremost. At least annually, though we'd recommend much more regular cadence on this. We recommend doing security awareness training for your whole employee base. Anyone who has access to email essentially or can touch a computer needs to have that training. And then we do phishing simulations regularly so that you can get a sense of, which are those employees that need additional training to help protect themselves in your organization. On top of that, we can also put tools in place to look over your email system above and beyond just normal spam filtering, things that look for impersonation attempts. And a lot of our clients have those tools in place already, but it's important to note, if somebody who never deals with invoices, all of a sudden is sending a request asking for an invoice to be modified or a routing number to be changed, these tools can kind of pull that out of your inbox and you don't even get it in the first place.
That's awesome. Are those tools foolproof? Foolproof?
Nothing is foolproof. The threat actors are really smart. They're businesses. They have customer service teams. They make it their business to find ways to get around the tools. So that's why we go to conferences. That's why we go to Marissa and I and Wilson and you guys were all there at Write a Boom earlier this year in Dallas, talking about the latest trends in security incidents and the new things that threat actors are starting to do. So we come back and then we put new tools in place on our side. We build new scripts that look for suspicious activity, and we run all of that stuff in the background for the most part to look for any sort of indication that something might be going wrong we need to dive into.
So are you telling me that cyber criminals are not just a guy wearing a Guy Fawkes mask in his basement hacking computers?
I think that's a kind of like a comical representation that you see in the media a lot. The truth of the matter is a lot of them are in the IT industry. They used to do nefarious things and then they clean up and then they turn into cybersecurity professionals and kind of dedicate their lives to protecting other people.
Sounds like someone I know.
Yeah.
It's
Now,
crazy. It's really crazy when you think about it. Like you have entire organizations. You see it, read about them in the in the media sometimes about like FBI taking down these hacker organizations. It's not just a person. You have these widespread people who like they have HR, they have
they have customer
payroll,
service.
customer service. It's crazy. Ransomware as a service. Like
Yeah.
this isn't just a guy who gets lucky trying to guess a password and gets onto your network. This is
They're respected
people.
in their community.
Yeah, yeah,
They're the Robin Hoods of their communities.
exactly. So it is a crazy thing, and they have no reserve about taking down a business because to them it's about successfully catching a fish. I mean, that's what it is for them. So
I like to say where, people where there's like, oh, you're being an alarmist and this is terrible and it's the end of the world. And my response is, it's the modern age pirates. They're pirates. Like we've they've been
pirate
here all along.
insurance.
Right? I know, there you go. New branding for these webinars. They're pirates, right? They've been around forever. There's some good shows you can watch. They're whole little communities. They're pirates.
Pirates who don't do anything, stay at home and lie around. All right. So I guess here's the real piece, right? Where does this all merge together? Because we talked about all this insurance stuff. We talked about the importance of security controls. But here's the thing: carriers are saying you must be this tall to ride this ride. So at this point, when you think of a cyber insurance policy, maybe some of you have delved into this at this point, where you've actually been rejected from getting a policy because you didn't have the right controls. You didn't meet the security standard that the insurance carriers are looking for today, where they're saying, hey, you know what? We want to see at least these things before we even consider the risk. Forget saving money on the policy. We're just not even going to give you a policy if you don't have these things in place. So Marissa, Andrew, could you walk us through what these 5 things? And you talked about EDR at one point already, but maybe just going through this list and talking about why each of these is important.
Sure. So from a tools perspective, multi-factor authentication, that's, when you put in your password to log into your VPN or to your email from home, you get that prompt for the secondary code, or maybe your watch or your phone has a button that you have to approve. Credentials are out there on the dark web because people get phished, because those phishing attempts are so sophisticated and so good. So if your credentials are out there, your username and password, somebody may try to log in with it at some point, and those attempts can come from anywhere in the world. So multi-factor authentication is that last line of defense that gives that person who's trying to log in, an additional prompt. Hey, give us this code, answer this question for us, push the approve button. And a lot of times when we look at the logs for our clients Office 365, you can see someone is trying to get in, but they can't get in because they don't have that multi-factor authentication code. It's not bulletproof, but it is the it is the defensible, is the word I would use, solution to protecting your email and your VPN access. And I think that's why you can't get a policy without it for the most part. Backups, this segregated backups basically just means you want that backup to not be on the server itself where the data is. You want it to be offsite. You want it to not be able to infect that backup if you do get some sort of malware in your system. So for us, that looks like a cloud backup product that encrypts those backups, that you need multi-factor authentication to even access them in the first place, and they're all offsite in another data center. That helps protect your data in the event that something does happen locally. We can restore to last night or the day before or the day before up to a month or so, just depending on how far back we needed to go. The endpoint detection and response, that's the EDR we were talking about earlier. For Prota's customers, that's Huntress. And we use the next-gen antivirus product, Windows Defender. Windows Defender is actually a great tool now. It used to be that it lagged behind, but all the reviews basically have said that it's one of the best ones out there right now. So that ties into our Huntress product, and the team of threat analysts looks at all the viruses or anything that Windows Defender finds, and then they can take action based on that and send tickets over to our team to resolve. And patching and vulnerability management, this used to just mean, are you getting your Windows updates? Now it's much more sophisticated. You need to be patching your firmwares on your firewalls. You need to make sure that your versions of Flash and Zoom and Adobe products, Microsoft Office products, all of those things have to be patched. And what I'm seeing on the cyber insurance applications now, and I know that Wilson's seeing this as well because we've talked about it. They're starting to ask for continuous vulnerability management. So that's not, do it once a year or do it once a quarter. They're basically asking, if a critical vulnerability gets published, how quickly can you remediate that and patch it? And they're looking for 2 weeks to 30 days now. So if you're not looking and creating tickets, on a regular basis for that kind of stuff, you can fall behind. And in the event that that's the threat vector that an attacker used, you could find yourself in a situation where your insurance doesn't want to pay it. And the last one is the cyber security employee training, which that's something we talked about a little bit ago. Every new employee should go through that training course, to cover the basics of phishing attacks, mobile device security, and then ultimately, you do the phishing tests to kind of catch, anyone who may need a reminder proactively before that threat actor gets to them.
I like to use analogies. And if anyone's been in any of my cybersecurity training webinars or presentations at conferences, you've heard this before. But for those who haven't, I like to kind of end it with the training component of the analogy of a vampire, right? So it's like, we don't want the vampire to come into the house, right? We want to protect the family. So we put the walls up, we put the doors, the windows, the locks, the things, the motion detectors, all of the things around our fortress of our house, aka the fortress around our business. But you're not always the one that's going to be answering that door. It's not even possible, right? Because it's a big house with a lot of people in it. And, you eventually are going to have the vampire knocking on the door, right? But everyone should know, don't open that door. But if they don't know because of the training, all of these other things that Andrew just talked about, and they open that door and they say, come on in, then we have the problem. So that's why it's always like, you have all of these other things, but you always have to have that continuous training as well, because vampire's going to be knocking on that door.
So good.
The
Don't
truth of the
invite
matter is,
vampire in.
this is a really simplistic view of it. Security is like an onion. There's multiple layers, and each of them is there in case the one before it fails. There are 5 things on this list, and in reality, there's 10 or 15 things that all of our clients get in place, all serving as a fail safe in case one of the other things fails, and they all work together to just lower your risk.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, whenever anyone says that cybersecurity is like an onion, I think of Shrek. But
You're supposed to. That's exactly what I
yeah, I
wanted
think
you to
that's the
think.
point, right? And then I think of parfait, and then I think of all these other things. So anyway, all that aside, to Andrew's point, this is really important. Don't look at this as your compliance measure, right? Because I believe that compliance leads to complacency, in the sense that if you're just given a list of things that you need to have in place, then it's like, okay, I did it, check those boxes, I'm done, right? But this is the bare minimum. This is the kind of thing where carriers will say, we won't even consider you for a risk if you don't have these. But there's often other things that they'll come back and look for. There's other things that we want to see. And ultimately, cyber insurance, I'm going to be totally honest, cyber insurance underwriters, carriers, they're 2 years behind in good security anyway. So for your policy, they're saying this is what we want to see. But for your business and your livelihood, you really need to make sure that you have more. I mean, that's just it, plain and simple. I do want to talk about patching and vulnerabilities, patching in particular. I mean, there have been clients that I've worked with for cyber insurance policies. They had just last year, they were still running an instance of something called Lotus 123 on their system. Not sure if you're familiar with it, but Lotus 123 is archaic, but also there's something with a lot of these programs that aren't they're not updated anymore. Maybe something that's even better to consider is like that old iPhone 3GS that's sitting in your nightstand because you don't use it anymore. The iPhone 3GS is no longer given software updates. So there are tons of vulnerabilities and exploits that criminals can use to get into an old phone that doesn't receive software updates anymore. So part of having good security is making sure that the software you're using is up to date so that any vulnerabilities or exploits that are on there can't be taken advantage of by criminals. I think it's really important, and that's a one that's often overlooked. So I'm glad you really hit home on that. So we have about 4 minutes left here. So I just want to hit some very specific things we went over. So the first thing, know what's on your insurance policy. We talked about that. It's crucial. I mean, go to your agent, talk to someone at Proda. They can get you in touch with us. Whatever approach you want to take there, you need to know what is on your insurance policy and that it is actually covering you. Get in front of your policies at least 60 days in advance. So like know that this is going to take me some time potentially to get this renewal going. So I need to make sure that this policy that I have the controls in place. I want to work with Andrew. I want to make sure that I have these policies in or these controls in place so that when the renewal comes up, it's smooth as butter, right? Understanding your sublimits. So it's not just about recognizing that some things are not fully limited on your, or have that full bucket amount like Wilson was talking about, but also recognize like some carriers offer better sublimits than others. So try to act to make sure that you're going to the best approach there. And then I'm sure Prod is helping you with this now. This says a line of breach coach, but ultimately what that means is have a good incident response plan in place. So talk with Andrew, talk with Marissa, make sure that you have you kind of know, and a lot of carriers to this point, I mean, Wilson, you've seen this, carriers are asking for they want to at least know that there is a documented incident response plan in place that if something were to happen, what the approach you take. I mean, think about it. If you work in a building, they want to see that you have fire plans and fire routes and all this stuff marked around the building. They want to see the same thing with a cyber incident. If a cyber incident happens and your business is rendered useless right now, what's your approach to recovery? They want to see that that's in place.
I like to think of an incident response plan of like, think of it as a script. We're writing the script for a play, and then we're going to run the play and do some couple of dress rehearsals. So when it's go time, everyone knows their lines.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love Marissa coming in with the analogies, kick butt analogies. I love it.
Some of them can be real cheesy though, so I apologize in
okay.
advance or at the end. So
cheese is fun. So I often say that a cliche is a cliche because it's true. So cheesy analogies are the same too. So we have about a minute here, so I just want to give an opportunity. If there are any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. But we appreciate everybody joining in today. I don't have access to the questions, I think, when they pop up, so that might be on you guys. But
yeah, I've had a couple of them that like have gone into email as well. So
interesting. Okay.
Answering those questions, and definitely if there's any questions or follow-ups from any of you guys after this, you know how to reach us, or if you want to just kind of have a one-on-one conversation and let us help you navigate what your next steps are, just reach out. You know how to get in touch with us.
Awesome.
Wilson, I just can't thank you enough for taking time to talk about this. You know, it comes back full circle to like, we know how important this is, and this is not our area of expertise. So us being able to bring in the experts is just truly just we're so grateful because this is, you know, we care about our clients' businesses so much, and we want to make sure that you guys have continued success and don't have to worry about these things.
Yeah, peace of mind is good. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun on our end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Likewise. Bye.